Well, welcome everyone. I hope that you've had a good day, that you've been learning new things or reinforcing knowledge that you already have. My name is Mark Clough. Oak and I started the agency-based education a number of years ago and have worked together since. I am also a former member of the Utah State Board of Education a number of years ago, and after that I was then president of the Utah Charter Schools Association. So background is, what's best for your child, that's what you should do. Whether it's public, charter, private, homeschool, I'm in favor of them all. I'm in favor of education, I'm in favor of children, and that's always been my position. I'll tell you my issues that I have with each one of them, but you've got to learn and follow Spirit and know what's right for you and your children. And that's the message we try to get across. That's what agency is about. And today we have three different groups that are going to be talking to us about private and homeschool co-ops, and also for charter schools, or one that went from private to charter, as I understand. Or he'll explain it better. Where I'm at right now, I retired again from being a software executive the first of this year, and I'm finally reaching my dream of starting a private school based on the Sudbury Valley model, and we'll be opening in August in Lehigh. Yeah.
What was the name of the school?
Alpine Valley Academy. And we have a website, you can go. The Sudbury Valley School, it's out of Massachusetts. And when I was on the state board, I said, you know, this is good for some kids, but there's got to be another way that's better. And so I retired, so I had lots of time. I searched the country looking at all different models and seeing the good and where they fit. And I found this school in Massachusetts. They're celebrating their 50th anniversary this year, and it impressed me. I couldn't believe that it worked at the time, but I've read everything I could find on it, and a lot of soul searching and otherwise, and it may not be for everyone, but it's one that blesses, I think, a lot of lives. And so with that, what we're going to be doing today, we'll have 3 presentations, and then after that we'll have a panel of us up here to answer all your questions, and the ones we don't answer through the presentations and that. Okay? We're going to start off with Tiffany Hess. Yeah, if I put my glasses on, I could read one. And it's Ileana. And they're from the Liberty Hills Academy, which is a private school here in Utah. With that, I'll turn over to Tiffany.
Yeah. Thank you, Mark. Ileana and I are here speaking for our principal, Jill, who is so graceful. We usually put her forward first, but we'll do our best job to tell you a little bit about Liberty Hills and what it's about. In Shakespeare's Tempest, Antonio has usurped his brother Prospero's position as Duke of Milan. When Sebastian, his conspirator, asks him about his conscience, Antonio says, "I feel not this deity in my bosom." Antonio is past feeling. Like Antonio, the culture we live in is past feeling. It is cold and without kindness or compassion, not leaving a child behind has become synonymous with high-stakes tests and inappropriate standards and questionable online learning platforms that we learned about today. We require children to check their spiritual nature at the door. When I came to Liberty Hills, I came because of Common Core and especially seeking a superior math education, kind of the same reason Oak questioned the public model. I will remain at Liberty Hills because I have now learned and know that educating the character of a child is more than half of what an education is really about. Children are still largely spiritual in nature. An education that is inconclusive of that nature is an education that is inclusive of that nature is more academic, more interesting, more rigorous, and more relevant. Randall Ridd, who was in the General Young Men's presidency of the LDS Church, told a story about how he planted 2 identical trees in his yard and then went and served a 3-year mission. One tree was in a place where it received full sunlight every day, and the other tree was in a place where it only received partial light. In many of the school systems, and including the public system, our children can receive partial light, but they are not able to grow into what they're really meant to be. Liberty Hills has sought to provide excellence in education by cultivating the spiritual nature of children. Agency is a spiritual principle. And while our school is a traditional classroom experience, we recognize that you can't educate a child without their consent. Appealing to a child's divine nature is a wonderful way to gain their consent. So I'd just like to tell you a couple of points about our school. Oak talked about in his presentation how he wishes that we would level students by ability. At Liberty Hills Academy, we level students by ability. At 9 o'clock, when is our time for math in our school, and the kids just go where they go. And we have someone who is traditionally in 7th grade taking a 2nd grade math class, and someone who's traditionally in 4th grade taking a 7th grade math class. And it doesn't matter when you can recognize them for their talents and individuality and the great abilities that they all have. It's okay if we have a challenge in one subject. And so school isn't a one-size-fits-all program. It should be as unique as the scholars who are involved. We have a family feeling at Liberty Hills Academy. We have 50 students now, around 50 students. And we encourage all grade levels to interact together, which we have found has been a great blessing to many of our students. Let's see. There are so many things that have already been mentioned today. I'm kind of skipping some of these things, but at Liberty Hills, the 3 pillars of education are God, family, and country, in that order, as Elisa mentioned. Our first loyalties are to our Heavenly Father and our Savior. The family is the central to our Heavenly Father's plan, and family time is valued. Therefore, we do not assign busy work as homework. We're very careful about what kind of homework we give. We think homework is important and that it teaches people how to learn on their own, and it solidifies the knowledge that they have learned in class, and it creates permanence. But we also believe that that requires an hour that's a class. And so we've shortened the school day in order to accommodate the hours worth of homework that our students oftentimes take home with them. But we really value our family time. We believe that the founding of our country was divinely inspired, and we reverence our founders and teach the divine providence of this country's origin. Through their sacrifice, this nation was born, and because of the freedoms that we enjoy, the gospel of Jesus Christ was restored to the earth. We believe that God requires all of our best efforts. This school has been a very difficult challenge to create. I'm sure Mark will tell you the same thing. It's not easy to build a school from the ground up. And especially the way we have chosen to do it without government funding of any kind. If we were to accept government funding, we would not be able to be the religious in nature. And so we have done it completely independent of that, and that's been very difficult. We had a developer come to our school who works in the charter school business, and he said, you can still teach great principles, and you just have to take out the doctrine of Christ and take his picture off the walls. And that's not what we really want to do. So God requires our best efforts, and this endeavor is not for the faint of heart. But if you give your all, and if you show up and do everything you can, you'll see miracles happen. So that's a little bit about our school. It's just a tiny taste. There's so much. But Ileana is going to tell you about the process of starting a private school. All of the documents and everything else that you'll need to fill out.
One thing that we teach at our school is where Bulgaria is, because that's where I'm from. And so our students know that it is in Europe and not in South America. And they also know that I speak Bulgarian and not Spanish. So, having said that, now you know as well. There are a few steps that, if you're interested in private school, starting a private school, that you can take. We were very fortunate to have a wonderful relationship with American Heritage School, particularly with Leland Anderson, who mentored us at the beginning of our private school. And he said, anything that is easily formed is easily dissolved. You might want to write that down, because starting a private school is a lot harder than starting some other groups. Let's just leave it at that. First of all, the very first step to starting a private school is deciding if you want to have a profit or a non-profit school. If you're looking for a for-profit school, your model would be Challenger. Challenger doesn't even post their tuition online. So, I'm sorry, you have to listen closely, that's my accent. So, Challenger is your for-profit model, and the other one is non-profit, which is your 501c3, which allows you to be tax exempt. You still have to fill out all the tax forms, but you don't have to actually pay taxes. And the benefit of having a 501c3 is you can ask people for donations, and they get a tax deduction. And so to do that, to become a 501c3, that's actually the very easiest part. You just fill out some little form online, and I'm sure there's a fee involved in that. I was actually not involved in that first step, but that is the easiest part. You don't even have to have anything else, no other documentation. You have to have a name and an address from somebody, and you can apply for 501c3, and that takes a few months to have that designation awarded to you. The second step is having a board of directors. American Heritage recommended to us to have between 5 and 12 people. We currently have 6 people on our board of directors, and Tiffany and I are playing double duty. We are both administrators and on the board of directors. Number 3, you have to have articles of incorporation to become a business or a limited liability corporation. And you don't have to reinvent the wheel for that one. You just Google it and use the documentation that people have already created for that. So articles of incorporation. Number 4, That is probably the biggest hurdle that if you're starting a private school, you will meet. That will be your biggest hurdle. That is the location, an actual brick and mortar building. That will be, if you had lots of money, it will probably not be a big deal, but if you are running on just simple donations or on your husband's salary, that is probably your biggest hurdle. Number 5, and number 5 could come anywhere between 1 and 5, is developing a mission statement. When we wrote our mission statement, which you can see on our website, we considered every single word just right to make it exactly how we wanted it, and that's what you want as well, because the mission statement is your guiding document. Everything else can change, and even your mission statement can change, but this is what will drive your operations, your day-to-day business, what you teach. The mission statement is the most important thing. And number 6, get a group of people to help you for free. Especially if you're a nonprofit, you will not have any money. We run completely free from government funding. We have no major donors. We qualified for grants from a couple foundations after our second year of operation, because in the first year nobody wants to give you money. Because most businesses fail, 50% of businesses fail in their first year of operation. So if you make it through the first year, you're very successful. So one thing that Tiffany failed to mention, we are in our 4th year and we are already accredited by Advanced Ed, which is the same organization that accredits public schools in Utah. And it's a big deal because we did it in 3 years. Most schools don't do that. We did an amazing thing. Let's see. So get a group of people to help you working for free, and this is a labor of love. If you think that you will open a private school and that will replace your salary and your husband's salary and you will have a retirement fund, then that's not going to happen. I can just tell you right now, if you're doing it for the money, don't. You're better off starting your own business or something else, but don't do it for money. It's absolutely a labor of love. And that's pretty much it. There's lots more to starting a private school, but basically don't be overwhelmed. Take one step at a time, and don't try to reinvent the wheel. Yes.
As it's searching there, I'll go ahead and get started. So I'm with actually the board chair for the Leadership Academy of Utah. So we are a charter school. We just opened August of this year, August 2017, when we opened our doors. Virtual doors. And so I want to kind of go through and talk about the process that we went through in starting a Utah public charter school, okay? So that's where my focus is going to be. I dipped my toe into the charter school world about 2.5 years ago, so I am not an expert. All I can do is share with you what we went through, the process, kind of some of the things we stumbled on, as well as different things to think about if that's what you're looking at doing. And one thing I've noticed today is there's so many different options, whether it's private school, whether it's homeschool, whether it is charter school. And that's one of those things that each of us individually as parents, we get to choose that for ourselves and for our children. And so just keep that in mind. So with that, just go through and kind of share my story a little bit. So I have 3 children, my wife and I, 3 children. Our oldest daughter, I have a 20-year-old all the way down to a 14-year-old. Our oldest daughter started public school, went through kindergarten, and after that we realized there's something different we want to do. We then homeschooled her and the other 3 children all the way through until she was about 13, 14 years old. And then we realized, we were wanting something a little bit more, something more that we felt like as parents we weren't able to give. And so we went looking out there, and what we found was a private school, actually, Williamsburg Academy, and we that really mirrored the curriculum, or a curriculum that we felt was nice, the culture that we were trying to develop as our family. And so we got her into a private school, actually, Williamsburg Academy. Our second and third children came along, and our oldest two actually went all the way through Williamsburg Academy. But about maybe 3 years ago, a number of the parents were looking at the curriculum and thought, you know what, this would be great to have in a charter school format, something that charter school format. So therefore, you know, the cost was a lot less, because private schools can be expensive, especially if it's a for-profit. And so with that, a number of the parents got together and created a founding board. So we ended up with, I think there was about 11 different parents that came from, actually they weren't all parents. Some of them were actually business professionals that we reached out to, because we realized we needed some expertise, some legal expertise, or somebody with some business expertise or accounting, things like that. And so I want to kind of go through and again, just share with you the process we went through. I was very new to charter schools, and I did not know a lot. So this may seem like a lot of information, but it was very, very key to the process we went through. You know, what actually is in Utah, since we're in Utah, we'll talk about Utah public charter schools, but, you know, what are they? So a tuition-free public school open to any Utah student. Open to the public, funded by the public, and accountable to the public. So I know that, you know, some of those terms, depending on your what your experiences are, those may rub you one way or the other, but that's just the way it is here, looking at a public charter school. Next, governed by an independent school board. Then they're accountable and actually legally binding written agreement, you know, with their authorizer. Authorizer here being Utah State Charter School Board, which ultimately reports to the Utah Board of Education. And but the thing about charter schools, I really like this third one here, is it gives the opportunity to have a focus on a curriculum that you maybe wouldn't find in a typical public school. So the freedom to choose, to try new strategies, hopefully inspire the students to experiment innovative ways of educating students, things like that. So now, this wording may sound very, very governmental, and that's because I pulled it straight off the school board website here. So public charter schools do have to comply with federal and state legislation and regulations, so something to keep in mind here. So just quickly go through those here. A charter school, they're funded on the principle the state funds follow the student. Okay? Those funds, those monies, actually come from the school districts that the student would have gone to, where they reside. They can apply for state and federal startup funds. Charter schools cannot charge tuition or require students or parents to make donations. They're subject to the same rules regarding school fees, attendance regulations, testing regulations, etc., as other public schools. So some great information there. Something that, to be honest with you, some of this was new to me as well, because you hear a lot about charter schools in Utah. So I wanted to just go through and share with you the process that we went through. Now, my understanding is that this process almost changes year to year. It's in flux. Some of the things that we went through, we started in 2015, were different for schools that wanted to go through startup last year, and probably be different for schools that are going through and looking for approval this year. But they're definitely just wanted to help let you know that there's some steps that you need to go through in order to do that. We started in spring of 2015, and that was starting with a founding board, a board of parents as well as professionals that were interested in being involved in helping. At that point, we had to submit a letter of interest to the Utah State Charter School Board. We did that in 2015. So this letter of interest, I don't know why they call it a letter. It was, I believe, pretty close to 30 or 40 pages in length. A lot of detail on there, a lot of specifics as to why we were wanting to start a charter school and what it was going to do and why we would be different and how it would benefit. This is then reviewed and either accepted or rejected by the Utah State Charter School Board. And then once ours was accepted, then they said, okay, now you can submit your formal application. Now this formal application was pretty close to, I believe, 150 pages long, and included everything, policies, included our business plan, the mission, vision, the curriculum style, how we would work with students, how to work with parents, how to work with teachers, and things like that. So actually, Utah State Charter School Board has a full office of individuals, and I think a lot of the office staff go through and help them. We received initial feedback, and actually our application was sent back, and based on the feedback, we were able to make some revisions and then do the final submission. So that final submission then went to a normal State Charter School Board meeting. I believe this was in December of 2015, and we as the founding board got to, this was a wonderful privilege we got to do, but go in front of the State Charter School Board, the board meeting, and in a sense, defend our application, answer questions that they had. You know, if there was concerns they came up about specific things, then we were able to defend that, give information, answer other questions they might have about something that might not have been clear. That was a very interesting and a eye-opening experience, but it's one that I'll never forget. So, but you know, I think that goes to show really how important, you know, the state really looks at charter schools, because it is taking public funds. We actually then made some revisions and resubmitted the final one. And that ultimately did go to the board vote, and we were approved in February 2016. Okay, so spring of 2015 we started. February of 2016 we were actually approved. So that was just approval. And then from there, we got to work on actually opening the school. So again, spring of 2016, it was a lot of project management, a lot of looking at the plan. You know, what is going to be? We knew that we were, based on the charter, we were going to open in August of 2017. So that is a year and a half from the time that we were approved, and there was a lot that needed to happen between that time, in that year and a half. One thing we got to learn about is Utah open meeting laws, right? We, as a public entity, we had to follow Utah public open meeting laws, which there's a number of regulations about, you know, how far in advance and where we had to post our board meeting agendas, how to follow those, how the proper way to go through and make motions and approve those. A lot of different things. We had to have a quorum present. In other words, for us, there was a majority of board members. I believe we had 9 at that point. So some great things we got to learn about that. We had there's policies. There's policies that are required and policies that were logical ones that we needed to create. So there was a number of those. The list from the state is quite long. I believe it's easily into 30 to 40 different policies that were required there. So depend on what type of school charter school you're opening. Leadership Academy of Utah is actually a fully online private school, public charter school, but fully online. So in other words, we actually don't have a school facility. We have offices where our executive director and other administrative staff work out of, but we didn't have to worry about actually building a school. There's many other charter schools where that is something that happens. So we got very good at writing and submitting requests for proposals, RFPs, for whether it was the facility, whether it's for the curriculum that we were going to be using. Are we looking to have a business manager? There's organizations out there that their business is to work with charter schools and help them with all the budgeting, the financials, making certain that the reports needed to the state are completed, submitted on time, things like that. There's other charter schools out there that do that on their own. Something to think about. EMO or ESP, so Education Management Office or Education Service Provider. I've heard both of them. I heard them used interchangeably, but essentially organizations that help with a lot of the different things within within a school. Some of them provide just very basics. Others provide a lot of different things. We ultimately did decide to go with Williamsburg Learning as our education management office that provided the curriculum, helped with the instructors, the teachers, the professional development for the teachers, the website, our student information system online, all those types of things. And those are all, have to go through the proper channels, proper board vote in order to approve those. Our director, the director of the school is the key. A school will live or die, I guess, by having the right director or not having the right director. We have an executive director, and so that's, recruiting and hiring that director is very key there. Marketing, we need to make certain we had enough students to open. We started with 280 students. That was our first year allotment. That was in our charter agreement. And so we needed to make certain that we were as close to full as possible. Required a website. Students had to apply. We had to have a full application process. If we had more students apply, which we actually did, we then went through a lottery process. And then there's the formal enrollment to get all that information needed to do the enrollment. And then we were eligible for different grants and loans from the state and federal grants and loans, which definitely can help, starting and running the school from there. So those processes, some of them are easier than others, but there are formal processes and timelines and deadlines to go through with that. And we ultimately opened in August 2017. So that was just a quick, year, let's see, spring of 2015 to August 2017, 2.5 years of a part-time, full-time volunteer job, I guess you could say. And that's really what it was. All the board members had their normal daytime jobs, and this is something we did on a volunteer basis on the side. So one of the key things that we really learned is the difference between governance and administration. As the founding board, we were making a lot of decisions, but once we actually were getting ready to open, and now that once we are open, you move into an administrative board. So the director is the one employee that's hired and accountable to the board. The director then is the one that makes all the other decisions there. He's the one, or he or she are the one that hires all the other staff. The board is there to set the mission and vision for the school, and I guess the boundaries for the director to work within, but then the board needs to get out of the way so that the director can run the school and meet that mission and vision that the board has set. Being a public charter school, the board members cannot be on the school staff. The conflict of interest are things that are brought up quite a bit, and that's something to think about. Many of the board members are also parents of students attending the school, and sometimes that's difficult, or something you have to keep in mind is, when do I wear my parent hat versus when do I wear the hat of being on the board? And sometimes you have to look at things different ways. We public charter schools use taxpayer dollars, so the board is answerable to the state. Okay, so after all of that, probably asking, why in the world would we want to do all that? For us, at Leadership Academy of Utah, we were looking for easier way and a less expensive way to access a curriculum and culture we had experience with and we knew worked well because our children had that experience, experiencing that culture in the private school setting. So that was one of our main reasons there. Ultimately, the idea is to help prepare them for success as leaders with those morals, with that vision that they need. Again, we had experienced and seen how the curriculum had impacted our children and changed their lives, and so that was one of the driving things there. And ultimately, to make that available for more Utah families. For more Utah families, more Utah students, so that they can experience that as well. So that was a lot of information. Thank you. We'll leave it open, I guess, to the Q&A session to go through the next part.
Well, hello. My presentation is very different from the first two. Cooperative learning groups can be anything you want them to be because there's no regulations, no accreditation. They usually tend to be much smaller, more creative, and you can do anything you want to without any governance. You can create anything from, You can create anything from something very tiny to something enormous and everywhere in between. So I'll share my experience, and hopefully while I share ideas, your minds will just explode into the possibilities of what you might create. It's one of the things that I love about homeschool is be creative and create your ideal world with the friends and people around you. The first thing, though, is you need to know your why, because it does get hard, sometimes expensive, and if you're the leader of it, the buck stops with you. If you want it to be awesome, you've got to lead well, and there are hard days, and knowing your why and having that very solid behind your vision and mission is critical. So if you, that would be the first thing to outline very definitively before you even move ahead with such an idea. So my why 5 years ago was that cute tall boy in the back in the blue shirt. That's Ben Larson. And when he was 10, he was my why. We'd been homeschooling, and it just wasn't quite enough for him. He's a born leader socialite, and he wanted just a little bit more than what I was providing. And I looked around at all of the homeschool cooperatives, educational groups, park days, field trips, all the things that were offered, and none of them spoke to me. He just wanted a social experience, but I wanted something very specific for my children. I don't like to just do things for fun. They always had to have purpose for me if I was going to invest my time and resources. And so I thought, well, I'll just create something then that's my ideal vision and that matches his. And so I did. But before I tell you about what I did, I'll invite you to consider your resources. Along with having a vision, think about, do you have the leadership qualities to embark on such an endeavor? And if not, maybe partner with a friend or an associate who might have the leadership skills required to begin an entity or a group of some sort. Finances, you can start groups with $0. They tend to be a little more successful if you have some finances or you're willing to invest something in them. The bigger you want them to be, the more the financial risk. I ended up finding a building, and we were able to cover the costs, and I never lost money. But there was always the potential, should things go south, our family would be left with the bill. So consider your risk, and if you're willing to take those losses, if it doesn't turn out how you'd hoped. Oh, I didn't finish those. Finances, skills. What skills do you bring to the table? What skills do you want? Who are you going to need? Who are you going to need to recruit? Consider your level of grit, your tenacity, your growth mindset. When things fail the first few weeks, are you going to be a great problem solver and keep at it and not give up? And other resources that you or your community might have to put into the venture. And then I would encourage you to start researching online and learn about all of the other homeschool groups, cooperative learning groups, all of the things that already exist, but not just local to your county. The internet is a beautiful thing, and just asking questions and research just homeschool group in general, and Google and see what's out there in Oklahoma and in Washington and in Mexico. And like you did your search in the country, find the best things that are already out there and connect with your ideal model or something that you could copy and maybe tweak to your vision. And that's what we did we created Family Leadership Academy, but the way we did it is we found an ideal model, tweaked it a little bit, we reached out to those leaders and said, would you share everything you've already created? Could we just copy you? And what I found is that I later started a small private school that was patterned after Liberty Hills, and I reached out to Jill and I asked her for all of her resources. And she very generously just sent me email after email after email filled with documents that I was just able to edit for ours was Liberty Rock Academy. It was the third educational entity that I started. So
you don't need to start from scratch. This has been done over and over and over again. You just have to find the closest possible model to copy. And then get all of their documents and just edit. So we copied iFamily, which is a homeschooling cooperative in Idaho that has really mastered the model. But it wasn't quite exactly what I wanted. And so I combined what they were doing with my perfect vision, which was, this is the curriculum from American Heritage School, their family school, their homeschool curriculum. And I'm just in love with their curriculum. That's what I wanted to focus my time and effort on, was sharing that academically with my children. And so I actually put out a post in one of the homeschool groups, and I said, does anyone have a co-op or know of one that's using the family school curriculum? I'd really love to join one. And somehow I got 30 emails back that said, we're so excited to start the one you're starting. And I thought, I went back and I read the email and I said, I didn't say I was starting. And then I realized that how there could have been a miscommunication in something I put, but all of a sudden I had 30 people who wanted this co-op that I was trying to find, not found. And so I ended up founding it. But then I learned an interesting thing. I'll tell you about in just a minute. So another idea that you want to consider as part of your founding vision is, one of my future slides is forming your board and getting your group of moms together who are going to be your leadership. I would suggest before you bring them on that you really clarify your own vision, to make sure that the people you bring to your cooperative are aligned with your idea before you get too far down the road. I learned this through experience with the first one, because I didn't do that. And then with the second and third, I knew before I talked to anyone, I wanted to say, I want uniforms, I want this, I want this, I want this, and I want this. Because if you're going to put all that effort and time and expense and risk and sacrifice, you want to make sure it meets the needs of your family. So one thing to consider is uniforms versus dress code, to be or not to be. Something to consider. It is a detail, but it tends to be a fired up topic if you don't establish that from the beginning. So in one of our co-ops, we went with different colored polos and any bottoms. The building, I have found, is the singular most difficult thing for educational cooperatives. We were very fortunate to obtain a lease with Stonegate in American Fork, but you can start with a home. You can start smaller. You can start with spring and fall cooperatives and use parks. We used our business. We have a large building for our piano store, and we took 6 rooms in our business and turned them into 6 different classrooms. So you can be very creative with how you find space, but that is, as a founder of any sort of educational startup or co-op, one of your greatest challenges. So pray over that building and make it happen. And then recruiting your team. And I put here, with caution. Caution, because, like I said, you want to really think through what you want before you recruit your team, or you might not recruit the right people. And along with recruiting your founding board or team, how you want to structure it, here's a little story to consider. So I founded 3 educational groups. And this was the first one, Family Leadership Academy, which was and is still amazing and incredible. But I had no experience with parliamentary procedure, Robert's rules, if I wanted it to be a for-profit business or a governing board. And so I just asked a few quick questions. We threw together some bylaws. We organized a board. I had all of the details of my perfect vision. We're going to have polos and this and the family school curriculum. And 6 months into it, my 4 best friends voted out my idea. And so the family school was ejected from the founding idea, and it turned into sort of a eclectic Charlotte Mason type group, which it's still going today, and it's incredible and wonderful. And these women have done amazing things, and they have a waiting list of like 30 families every year because it's so good. But it wasn't really my founding vision, and our family didn't continue with it because I wanted something that was centered around the family school. So I started a second one that was based on the family school, and our private school was also based on the family school. So just be careful that you educate yourself enough in parliamentary procedure and how boards work that you want to guide against your idea being voted out within a few months. So there's a caution for you. This was our original group of moms from that first email I sent out. And you can put together educational cooperatives very quickly or very slowly. There's a book I'll recommend at the end on how to put together commonwealths, and they recommend over a course of a year or two having monthly groups and discussing your philosophies and ideas and taking it very slowly and building a like-minded vision. That's one approach. I had a 10-year-old boy, though, who wanted friends right now. And so we put together Family Leadership Academy from start to finish in 1 month. We found our building, our board. That might have been part of the problem why I didn't know enough about that board. We did it maybe too quickly. But this was our first day at Stonegate. So it's very achievable when you get lots of moms together working on a common vision. You put everyone to work on different tasks, and you can accomplish great things quite quickly. So part of that, having many hands doing different things, I would suggest, in addition to your board, that you put together a significant amount of contributing committees and put everyone to work, give everyone an assignment. I think of it kind of like a church setting where everyone needs a responsibility and a friend. And this was our Halloween party. Somebody did marketing for us. We had fall festivals, lots of different events so that everyone was contributing. We had a little newsletter, and I would caution against busy work and not just create assignments that are busy work, but if you find great value in that newsletter, then by all means. I put this up here, though, because I thought it was kind of busy work, and we didn't keep it going. We found other things for those moms to do. Field trips, park days, all of these extra events. You want to think ahead of time about what your vision is so that you'll get a lot of feedback from the group, and you want to listen and accommodate everyone's ideas. But I also felt like our co-op turned into a bit of a runaway train, that a lot of the families wanted it to be all things for every family. And so you need to learn how to set limits, and maybe for field trips and park days, partner with other groups or other entities or other homeschool email groups, Facebook groups, and not feel like your co-op has to be everything to everyone. Scholar events. So this would be like the 12 to 18-year-olds, and often homeschool cooperatives will provide extra activities and vision retreats and all sorts of extras. So I put, because they're amazing and wonderful, but they tend to also be a runaway train and cause so much expense and extra time that you want to be cautious about what you commit to, or when you're in the brainstorm phase, it's easy to let that idea list just go whoosh, and then you say, yeah, we're going to do all of these things, and then before you know it, you're the leader of that who's committed to all of these glorious, amazing things that you then have to make happen. And so what I would suggest is maybe find other scholar events already planned or in existence, and try and piggyback or join together with other events, and bring your group of homeschool families to things that already exist. So join forces with existing opportunities. For example, this is we had a debate class, but rather than holding our own debate events, we partnered with American Heritage and Wasatch Debate League and would send our students to existing events. Likewise, we invited a Kung Fu instructor to come in to our location rather than trying to provide Kung Fu classes, and she actually paid us because she used our space and she invited community students to come in. So again, we had a better program that brought us income and that we didn't have to run. We did the same with our drama program. This was our Aladdin production, and doesn't it look like we have a huge group? That was actually my second co-op I started, and we had a tiny group when we started out. So about 10 of those students were from ours. We had other students, but not all of them were in the drama. But we partnered with Legacy's Dance Studio, who puts on amazing productions. And so from a marketing standpoint and for all of our families, they felt like we were putting on these Broadway productions. But we just found the right partners to partner with so that I didn't have to be the leader of the Aladdin production.
So joining forces can really save time and money. Here again, the synergy of combining with others. This was a Halloween dance. Another way you combine with others and not do all the work yourself is combining with other co-ops and other groups. So for this Halloween dance, we combined with 2 other homeschool co-ops and divided the work. So we had a larger group and less work. And this other picture is American Heritage provides a lot of activities and that they will open up to the public. So we always attend their, what's this one called? Their Constitution Day. We would always take our group to their Constitution Day. Again, no cost, no effort. All we had to do was organize carpool. And yet we had all these beautiful photographs and memories and marketing of these huge Constitution Day events that were part of our co-op. One thing I wouldn't farm out or have someone else do, I feel is critical to the unity and longevity of a quality cooperative learning environment are the mama nights or the parent nights. The FLA, Family Leadership Academy, they still have these going on every month, and they're open to the community. It's a great resource if you want to learn about co-ops. You can go and attend, ask them questions. But these are critical for outside of co-op day, having a time to discuss and build bonds and unity as parents to ensure that you're mission aligned, that you have the same ideas about what's happening during the co-op, and also for recruiting. I think I would attribute these events for the reason why they have an ongoing waiting list of 30 plus every year. Involving dads, these are some of our dad teachers. With my second cooperative I started, the first one just had mama nights, mom's night. The second one we had couples night. And I'm not sure what I'd recommend to you because the dads were a little bit hit and miss. Some of them were kind of drugged there by their wives, and some of them were really enthusiastic. And so I'm a little torn if I would do that again, because it seemed the moms all wanted to be there 100%, and the dads really shifted the dynamic. But we love involving the dads. So I would encourage you to just make sure your messaging is open to fathers, that we want you to be involved, we want you to help teach, we want you to come to all of our meetings, and dads are always welcome. But I would hesitate to say it's couples night where dads are required, because I've seen that also not be great. We hosted a lot of events for the community, similar to this conference today on a smaller scale, where we tried to present education and resources and opportunities for all to come and participate with us and feel welcome and learn about what we were doing. I would suggest running it like a business. To really be successful, it can't be a teeny tiny little side hobby. You've got to go all out and make it awesome for your children and your friends who are committing to also. So I would find a mentor who can really help you have a great website. You need a logo, financial reports to your board if there is a fee involved, have appropriate meetings, social media engagement, and go into it with a true plan like you would with a business plan, a 12-month plan of what you're doing. You'll be much, even if it's a small group, to really make it excellent, it needs to be run like a business. So a few resources to finish up with. The New Commonwealth School by Annelity Milne and Tiffany Earle is a great resource if you want to have, Commonwealth is a specific type of co-op. We read through this as a board and did a little picking and choosing of their ideas because it's rare to find anything that's a perfect fit. And so it's a great book, though, to pick and choose from. Diane Jepson I would recommend as a mentor, either through her website, to get a course on parliamentary procedure, or you can hire her to help with bylaws or to mentor you if you need help learning how to run organizations. And how I mentioned in a former slide to just copy. I would recommend the Leaders of Family Leadership Academy or any that you seek out and ask them for their documents and ask them questions and just copy what they're doing. And you're welcome to reach out to me. I'd be happy to help and share all of the resources that I have if you have specific questions.
Thank you.
Did the private school actually give you their curriculum that you had liked?
No, so the private school is actually owned and operated. Well, works with Williamsburg Learning. Williamsburg Learning is a educational management office. We have we sent out a request for proposal to different organizations for curriculum. We looked through and found the one, and we actually pay them. So they are a for-profit organization. We pay them to use their curriculum and their services.
Okay. And then I was wondering, since you're under the banner of public education, do you guys have like the national assessments and all of that?
Yes,
And
so
do you have to follow
we
them?
have to follow those same state, like state testing, things like that, yes. So in Utah, parents do have the option of opting out if they so choose for their students, but we do have to follow those same state and national testing.
But you still have the freedom to teach the way that you want to?
So yes, so our curriculum, actually, it is an accredited curriculum as well. That's one of the nice things that Williamsburg Learning has, is their curriculum is accredited. And so it does cover all the state mandates. Yeah.
So you didn't start your charter school to make money, you started it to save money because the private school is so expensive?
Correct, yeah. So public charter school is not for profit, because it's a public school. So Williamsburg Learning, they still have their private school, and there's still a lot of people that go to their private school that are wanting to maybe not have a full, maybe the students don't want to have a full, class load, and so they do that. Or if they do want to have a full class load, and they're in Utah, and they can come to the charter school. So there's a lot of different options there.
I guess I could ask you on the charter school, how did your kids do on the tests last year? Like, are they doing okay? Was it this year that it started? So you
Yeah,
have
just
that
August.
stage?
Yeah, so was that 3 months?
Yeah, so you guys haven't even
Yep,
started.
3 months.
So no testing yet?
No testing. I think actually the first testing comes here in the next few weeks
So
or
have you had
something.
any parents opt out?
Parents always have the option of opting out. Yeah, we're very curious to see what our opt-out percentage
You
is
haven't
going to
seen
be.
anything yet.
No, not yet. I mean, preliminary, so, yeah. We anticipate a few to possibly a large number opting out, but we'll have to see how that goes.
Why is it a conflict of interest for board members to be on the school staff? If you founded the school and it's not for profit, that you're not making money off it, why can't you be a teacher or be involved with the school itself? It doesn't seem fair.
That's Utah state law. It's a state law.
But why is it a conflict of interest? Just because they say it is? Or is it-
Because as a board, yes, you'd be making decisions that could potentially, so the director reports to the board, okay? The director is paid. The director also hires the staff, and the staff are paid. If I'm a board member that's also a staff member, then I could be making decisions that it would ultimately have money flow down to me.
Oh.
So that's where the conflict of interest is. Good question. Make me think here.
So can I ask the lady who did the co-op, like how many days a week are you doing? Like, what's the kind of fees that you have? Because it looks like you're putting some money into it. You had a budget, you're marketing.
The first one I started that we had the building I showed, we had $1,000 monthly lease, and we were charging the families, I might have my math wrong, 'cause this was 5 years ago. I think it was around $50 a month per family.
Did they
And we
provide
had-
supplies?
Yep.
Did you provide those?
Well, it was a free market system that we set up. So everybody created their own classes, their own class ideas, and their own fee. So some of the classes were free, some of the classes had a cost, and people signed up for them based on if they felt it merited the cost or not.
And how many days a week did you meet?
We just met on Fridays. They now meet at the Leahona private school, which is only Monday through Friday. It's Monday through Thursday, so Fridays are open. So Family Leadership Academy is now using their building on Fridays.
So, to do a co-op at your home, you need to get a business license, right?
at least I've learned in my neighborhood, and they said it is this way in every city, but the fees are different, that to just teach piano at my home, I have to get a business license, and it's $175 a year. And so if you did a co-op and you had, they said that the issue is the cars coming to your house. People won't like that, so you've got to get a license so that they're not bothered by it. And so if you have a whole bunch of people coming to your house for your co-ops, I just wondered, what have you done and heard or?
I've never done it in my home. I know of others who do run them out of their homes, and I've never heard of anyone getting a business license. I don't know. Does anyone else know if that's required?
Yeah, we looked into this because we were considering just doing homeschool co-op at one time of that and using it in a home. And you have to have a license, but there's those that run that don't have it, and they're breaking the law.
So get a license.
So if it's called like a co-op,
Right.
cooperative learning.
Yeah, there's, that's breaking the law. It kind of gets how you get, there's ways around it, but if someone can complain about it, there could be consequences. Traffic is the biggest thing they start looking at. Well, on Friday, I have all these people in the street. Your neighbors might become suspicious what's going on and want to know what's happening and that. But
What if you like to have a?
yeah, if you're paying, if you're taking dues at all to get materials or anything, then there's an issue because you're really then a business. And so, you just got to watch that line of where you're really a homeschool co-op that's just a group meeting together versus someone who's kind of running a little business. Even if it's not for profit. And that, yeah.
I have a question for the private schools. With regard to tuition, and what's been your experience then with parents and when they're used to, free public school, and how does that all play out? And have you found ways to reduce tuition and kind of a broad question?
Well, the way we reduce tuition is by working for free. We have worked for free for 4 years now, and generally, parents do not like to pay tuition, especially if they cannot be reimbursed by MyTech High or another third-party provider. They don't like to pay tuition.
Can I add something to that? Do you mind?
Yeah, no.
Oh, I was just going to add that at Liberty Hills, we have tried really hard not to turn away anyone who has wanted to come to our school. And so there's been a lot of effort to obtain scholarship money to help those families that would like to have a private school education but are not able to afford one. And so, and I think most private schools in Utah that we've looked at do that. So if you're thinking of founding a private school, just know that there will be people who will need some portion scholarship money. Although, personally, I would advise never to provide a 100% scholarship, for many reasons.
Where were you able to find that scholarship money? Were you going to businesses? Did you go out and actively seek that?
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
we beg people.
Yes.
Businesses,
We have no shame anymore. No shame. at
relatives,
all.
friends, businesses. We've learned how to write grants. We actually received money from Larry H. Miller Foundation as a private organization, which they said never happened. So
So are you all fundraising, or is there one of you on the board who specifically fund fundraising?
Ileana does the large majority of it.
yeah. But you've done some of it as well from your
Yeah.
family members.
In our school, we have a set tuition. We're planning at some point in offering, partial scholarships. I agree 100% with that. They need to have some skin in the game, so to speak, and make it better. But I went looking at trying to set up our tuition. range from Waterford at $22,000 a year, and American Heritage around $8,000, and others. And so our goal is to try to keep the costs down as much as possible, so that we can keep the tuition as reasonable as we can. But we're a nonprofit, but there's still a lot of expenses involved. We will be paying our staff. We may have some parent volunteers, but we will have a paid staff.
Yeah. And that's how we operate. Instead of like the public system where you pay the administrators and then trickle down, Jill, Ileana, and I decided that we would pay the teachers, and if it ever trickles up, we will be paid. And so we pay our staff because they teach our children, and we want our children to get the best education possible.
But we're not morally opposed to being paid.
Right, we are not, yeah, we are not morally opposed to being paid.
Go ahead.
So how did you get the money to start your school? Was it just by those asking everybody for a little bit of money?
I think the biggest blessing that happened to us is our building was donated for the first year. And that really helped us get off the ground. But the money for our school comes largely from tuition and a little bit from donations and free labor. So if you know anyone who wants a volunteer opportunity.
Well, to answer your question more specifically, so Jill has 4 children. So she paid her tuition in advance, and we used her money essentially to do all the paperwork, because all of these documents that you have to file, they come with an associated cost.
Yes.
Nothing's free with the government, so you have to pay, and essentially we used Jill's tuition money to pay the upfront costs.
So she has to pay tuition and work for free.
Yes.
Yes, we pay tuition and we work for free.
Yeah.
And so the person who donated the building, that's a huge donation. And it's like an angel donor. But with angel donors, sometimes there's like strings attached and problems. And I've been afraid of, if I have somebody that wants to donate a building or a great big chunk of money, did you write up a contract and you know exactly what they expect, so that I don't have to worry
Yes.
about them coming back saying, I want this from you now?
That would be wise to have a contract. That would be wise to have a contract.
I'm wondering, at what point in the process do you finally get money so you can start?
We applied, I'm trying to think through that. We had applied for a specific grant that is available during startup years, which is the year before actually school starts. I believe it was January of 2017, this year, that we actually received our first actual funds. Yeah, so we didn't have a building, but we actually did have, we had some funds through a separate loan that we used, because we used some other professional services to actually help us write the charter. So we actually spent money up front even to get the...
You should have hired me to write your charter. I can write your charter.
There we go. There's a lot of different services out there that's the people that do that. So
Reimbursed you afterward? 'Cause
it's something that was built into the school and is being paid back to the person that was loaned from, yes.
And so, when you start up, do they just give you the chunk of change that you need, like 5.6 million, and you just go run it?
No, it's specific amounts that you request.
To do each
Because we didn't actually have to build a facility, ours was a bit different than those schools that do, and I don't know that I could actually speak to how that works with schools that do, but I mean, it was not a large amount at all. So there's actual startup loans and startup grants. There's 2 different things that charter schools have access to, or at least can have access to, apply for and see what they get. So the grants are money that doesn't need to be paid back. The loans do.
None of them have, the grants have no strings attached?
Correct. The grants are there, money for, some are set aside specifically for charter schools during startup and during the first year. It kind of goes through that. Yeah, no strings attached. depending on how many charter schools start, those grants are either larger or smaller.
Yeah,
You know, if you had 10 schools start, then that grant money for each individual school would probably be less than if you only had 3 charter schools start in a year.
So do you know, what is that called, the Utah State
Charter School Board, yeah.
How many, I mean, if they get 20 applications a year, how many are they gonna, like, what's their odds of getting the work?
I don't know specifics on that. I do know that they were very particular about what they looked at and what their office staff looked through. I think they take into consideration what's going on in the charter school landscape currently that year. Charter schools have been in the news for good or bad over the past few years. They have things that I would assume they're probably looking to avoid. They're also at the same time looking for those innovators. You know, I think that's one of the key things they're looking for is a school that's going to be able to bring something to the Utah market that's not there, or provide some services, or be able to reach a demographic that currently isn't being reached. So there's a lot of different things that the State Charter School Board would be looking at.
The legislature sets out amount of money that they make available, and so there is a limited number of growth each year of new students within the charter system. They have a little flexibility there, but it's kind of set. So as they're looking how many students you can have, if you're going to have 600 and they're going to have 800 and they're going to have, you know, once you hit that limit, you're kind of, well, you got to wait till the next year. So there is that in there.
All of that is public record, right? You can go on the state's website and you can see who has applied, their charter.
Yeah, it's all open.
All of it is all public information. You can
Yeah.
go find it today. And how much
I
money
can
they
actually
will
look
be
at the
given
charter
and
as well.
all
Oh,
that
yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
And I can copy their charter.
Yeah, it's there.
That's what they do.
Are the applications on?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, on the website, you can go and see, it's public, because it's public, you know, you can go see everything. Everything's posted on there, the grants, the loans, all that type of stuff, yes. You can read our charter, you can read all the charters that were submitted as well, and you can see which ones were approved and which ones were not approved.
I mentioned, you were asking if you're interested in building, since they didn't build, but what they have is that there's companies out there that'll come in and build a building for you, and you sign a contract with them. They know you're going to have so many students, and they know how much money you're going to be getting from the state, and so in the budgeting with that, they're giving you the loan because they know they're going to be
Right.
pretty much guaranteed that they're getting all that money back because the state's involved in that.
What was the cost to start your school for the legal fees, the lawyers? And what lawyers do you know, really know this type of law with private schools and would do a good job?
Send us an email and we'll have Jill answer that question.
Okay.
It's a good one for Jill.
You need a few $1,000s,
Yeah.
but I can't tell you the exact number because I don't
And
know.
you don't know the name of the lawyer?
No, I don't.
okay.
Was it more just business, you're setting up your business or your 501c,
All of that, all of the
that
above.
kind of thing? Because there's not, I mean, I don't know if you're a private school, there really isn't any laws you have to follow in terms of,
There was a lawyer involved with the 501c3 setup, so, and Jill wrote that and did an amazing job. Actually, a lot of times 501c3s take a long time to get through. Ours took 2.5 months, which is really unheard of. So,
I'm still working on mine. And actually, though, I went through LegalZoom to set up my 5103. They, you know, I answered some questions, and they set up and gave me the document and told me a couple of things I needed to add to it, and it's, I think, around $800 for the fee to send to the government.
Do you guys have plans for, or what are your plans for, you know, in the school? I mean, will you take as many kids as want to come, or do you have a cap kind of in mind?
one of the things about our school that I really have found to be very successful is the small class sizes. So I would like to keep the And I think we would like to keep, I hate to speak for all of us, but I guess that's why I'm here. Anyway, we would like to keep the class size under 15 to 18 students, and really 15. And so, and we wouldn't, I wouldn't like the school to grow over more than, you know, maybe 200 students. So we have about 50 right now, but that provides a family kind of feel. I know as an administrator, each one of those students, I know what their talents are, what they're struggling with, and what needs to be done to help them in lots of situations. And so I don't want it to grow beyond to where some child is walking through the door that is a stranger to us. We really want to keep that small. So if there's growth beyond what our current school can now accommodate, I think it would be what we'd think of doing is opening another satellite. So anyway, do you have anything to add?
Sorry, are you affiliated at all with Capitol Hills Academy? Or
No, we're
Okay.
not.
Something similar to that.
Capitol Hills is charter school.
Oh, yeah.
What ages are at your school?
Pre-K through 12th grade.
Kind of have to go off of the enrollment size. As a charter school, in our charter, we were very specific as to our student amounts. So we start first year at 280. Year 2, we can go up to 385. And year 3, we're capped at 490. So for us, unless we submit an addendum to our charter and get it approved, 490 students is the largest we can get by year 3.
So on yours, did you build yours like a K through 6, then in a couple of years you'll...
No, ours is 6 through 12.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, ours is 6 through 12. Yeah. One resource that I didn't mention, which I'll go ahead and do that at least for charter schools, is the UAPCS, Utah Association of Public Charter Schools. I don't know exactly specifics, but my understanding is they're a separate organization operating on a grant, and they work specifically with charter schools as well as people that are interested in starting charter schools. They do trainings. They have staff that will come out and teach at your board meetings, work with your school staff. Incredible resources. They have our full year before we even opened. They have a full year course. I think it's monthly or every other month where as board members, you can go and learn what you need to be aware of and what you need to do. That's where we learned a lot about, for example, Utah procurement laws and the legalities behind that, open meeting law, business partners, as far as like the finances and the budgeting and things like that. So great resource, UAPCS, Utah Association of Public Charter Schools.
For months now, I've been surveying people, asking them, what do you want in a private school? If you could dream it up, what do you want? And I've gotten all positive, but once I asked a public school teacher if she could think of the perfect school, she's like, there's no such thing. And then she started asking me, what are your qualifications to start this? And I said, well, I'm not going to, and do you have a teacher's license? I said, well, I wouldn't maybe teach. I would just be in charge, and I would hire people who are qualified, to get her to come down. She's like, well, do you have an educational leadership in administration? And well, I'm trying to find out what I need to do. Like, in all of your experiences, is there anything you'd say, well, definitely get this degree, or definitely get this class, or this would really help? Like, I can't do everything. The BYU professor said, how long do you expect to live? You need 6 majors in order to start a school. And I know that people have started schools without 6 majors. So what would you say that I should do? I can't calm everybody's fears, but like generally, what would you suggest?
Our staff who've applied, we haven't hired any because we're still in the process, but our staff is a wide range. One does have a teaching background, but after teaching in public schools is why he doesn't want to be there, and why he loves the model that we're following. But he's qualified in math, to teach math and that. But our art teacher, she has an art degree from Brigham Young University. Our English literature instructor used to teach in colleges. And these, for us, since we're private, we're not worried about what degree or qualification they have, other than what do they know, what's their experience, what's their ability, and do they understand our structure and how we build. That's what's important to us. I mean, I have degrees in manufacturing, engineering, computer science, and such.
Nobody's bothering you. You're well qualified.
But and I'll be teaching math, and I'll be teaching, but not on a regular basis. It's because of the form of our school. We've been asked that by others, and this is, you know, we're looking for people who have experience and understanding and knowledge and skills. My wife is a great sewer, and if a child is interested in learning sewing, she's going to come and help them, work with them to sew. I have a daughter who went through culinary arts, and if someone's interested in learning, so we pull in resources as needed and supplement the basics.
That's the right answer. I love that answer. It's just you have so many people in your immediate community that have so many gifts and talents that they could share with children. And I think one of the limitations of a public school setting is that we feel like we've got to hire a teacher who's got to be there for 7 hours every day. We have experienced people that come in bi-monthly, on a weekly basis, as needed. We have a geologist who's worked in the field for 30 years. We have a 30-year elementary school teacher. We have all kinds of different experience levels. So no, you don't need to have 6 degrees. But you do need to find, as Mark mentioned, people who are mission aligned, and Carmel mentioned as well. What is your mission, and are these people mission aligned?
Yes, and I think it's also very important to have at least one person who knows how to do business, how to run business. Mm-hmm. It cannot be a charity. We would love to help everyone who comes through our door, but we also have to run it as a business in order to stay afloat. And it's very helpful to have somebody with a strong business sense, or else you will fail very quickly.
Carmel, it's my understanding you're running a hybrid school now. Is that true, and can you explain what that means?
I did last year.
Last year, okay.
Yes, we closed it down because my husband and I are launching a tech company right now, and I couldn't do both. And none of the parents at our school wanted to take over. But ours was patterned after Liberty Hills. We were also mentored by Leland Anderson from American Heritage. And so everything they've shared is exactly what we were doing.
Can you tell us what a hybrid school, what that means, and what that looks like?
It's probably not exactly what you were doing, but what it meant for us is that it's homeschooling families who were coming together for a group education experience, and the parents could choose between once their tuition was paid, they could choose how much or how little to participate in the school. If they wanted to, we were open Monday through Friday, but they could choose if they wanted to come Monday, Wednesday, Friday. They could choose whether they wanted the accredited path or not. So we were still all homeschoolers because we all had homeschool affidavits. So we had 100% freedom to do whatever we wanted to do, but we had all of the academic and structural resources from American Heritage School for those who did want to have a more school-type environment with paid teachers and offerings. It was also hybrid in that from 8 o'clock till 1 o'clock, we had structured classes with paid teachers or community mentors that we brought in. And then from 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock, we had homeschool cooperative type classes. And so and the parents who were part of the system could pick and choose from everything that we offered. So that's the hybrid mix.
Can I add something to this? So the hybrid was the way we were doing it, we had a partnership with American Heritage where they provided accredited high school curriculum to our high schoolers because we were not accredited at that time. Now that we are accredited, we still use some of their curriculum, but our students will get accredited credit from us. We are no longer dependent on American Heritage, and American Heritage is no longer doing this. That was a beta program we were just fortunate to be at the right time, at the right place for them to try it out on us, but they're no longer doing that.
So at what point does a co-op become a private school? Where you talk about they were all homeschoolers, all had signed the affidavit, but then it sounds like they could go and live at your school pretty much,
Usually co-ops are 1 day a week,
Mm-hmm.
and often just a few hours a week.
Right.
And once you're moving towards the private school model or a hybrid model, it's usually 5 days a week. Usually the difference is maybe free or $50 a month for an entire family versus hundreds of dollars a month per child. And moms volunteering to teach classes for an hour a week versus paid faculty to teach. Any other differences you'd outline?
I think that's very important to distinguish right from the beginning, because you will have parents expecting to participate in a co-op situation in exchange for tuition, and you cannot charge tuition for some people but a co-op back and forth to others. It just doesn't work that way. I mean, you can, but it will not be your ideal situation. You will always have somebody who is very disappointed and quitting on you.
You'll fail after a year. You have to have a rule across the board that works for everyone. And I would just say about Liberty Hills, we do offer, even to this day, several levels of involvement. People can come just for one class, or they can take everything we offer, a full schedule. They can just come for math. But we are finding that the people who are drawn to our particular model are really interested in or not a religious education, but an education that is LDS faith-based, but is a traditional classroom experience. So the longer we have gone on, the fewer part-time students we have and the more full program students we have.
And we have options. We'll be 5 days a week, but we have options for homeschoolers to come in for 2, 3, or 4. But as I was saying, what we've seen from others who've tried it over time, that starts dwindling because they either really like it or they don't like it, and they start. So we're being flexible there, but we'll give them an opportunity. We see it kind of as a marketing opportunity here. Find out what we are doing a couple of days, few days a week, and then make your decision.
I asked you this before, but maybe the others have some ideas. Insurance. But there's tons of different kinds of insurance, and how do you choose which one, and how much does it cost for a private school? Did you two need to get insurance for your schools, or does the government cover charter school insurance and the risks of a co-op? I don't know.
That's a really good question for Jill. And again, you can answer that.
So depending sometimes on your lease with the building owner will require a certain amount of money. So I know in our first year when we were not paying rent, they required us to carry over, I think it was $6 million worth of insurance, which was pretty high amount. Our current landowner does not require such a high amount, but it's still money. If you want the exact amount, we'll have Jill tell you.
We had to look into insurance because of our lease with the building. The landlord required it. I think it was around $1,500 for a year. I don't remember what the coverage was, but we just added it into our expenses. Insurance.
Yeah, we're required as well. And even, for example, I believe our treasurer on the board also has an additional bond of some kind as well, so required by the state, yeah.
Come out, you said that you're using a family school curriculum with your co-op,
Mm-hmm.
which I was just made aware of in this meeting. How did you use that if you were just meeting one day a week? I mean, you said you had 6 classrooms. What were you guys doing in the classrooms? I don't know.
Well, there's 6 subjects.
Okay.
And so, there were 2 different ways we used it. With one would be the private school way we used it, and the other was the co-op. In the co-op, we were just having different moms who were interested in different topics offer a class. And so they would pick, if it was the geography teacher, she would pick from any of the family school lessons in geography and offer them on Fridays, and any of the students. Family school is set up to be a preschool through 12th grade experience, usually divide the younger ones and the older ones, but it's meant to be a one-room schoolhouse type learning environment, so it works very well for cooperatives. So we just had, we had a jump rope class and all of the family school classes combined together. In the private school setting, we had a different subject each day of the week. So history was one day, geography was one day, science, literature, and then we had art and music every other Friday.
You spent the whole day just on that one?
No, 2 hours.
Oh, okay.
And the way family school is structured, that's how it's meant to be taught.
Okay.
Another idea I would add that I haven't heard talked about as an educational option today is the way I'm currently homeschooling my children. And just maybe something to consider is tutors, private tutors, and finding mentors for your children. You don't have to necessarily have a co-op or a private school or charter school. And if the expense of mentors or tutors is a barrier, you can gather with a few families and share the cost of a tutor. So just another option.
Are there specific things you do with your schools to make sure the kids can go to college if they choose to do so? And are there things that colleges you're hearing are requiring that maybe they didn't used to, but we should be aware of?
So here's a plug for homeschool that it really works, this paradigm. When my son was 12, I almost pulled the plug and I thought, oh, this isn't working. But I just stuck with it. I believed in what my mentors were telling me. And this year we sent him to American Heritage at first because I went back to work full time. And then the teacher called me and said, your son's too smart, we can't help him. We suggest you have him apply to BYU. And so we have him now preparing to, he's 15. We met with college entrance advisors. And you can have, homeschooled children can apply to BYU and other colleges very early. They just have to get high scores on the ACTs. They're not given any sort of special privilege. Their applications just go into the same pool as everyone else's. But I've heard of a lot of homeschool families that from maybe age 14 or some even at 13, that applying to college in several colleges is just one of their assignments. It's like, we just apply to college every year. And we take the ACT twice a year. It's just part of the homeschool curriculum. And one of my friends who did this, the first year her son applied to college just as a homeschool assignment, he was actually accepted accidentally. And so he went off to college, but after 6 months decided he didn't really like it and went back to homeschool. So it's definitely an option. And as far as focusing on it, really what I learned from the BYU admission counselors that what they're looking for with homeschooled youth is really the ACT and the essays. And they have really ramped up their consideration of the essays because the test scores are getting so close that they're putting much more emphasis on the essays. So they're really looking for that well-rounded student who can communicate well, who is a high level of character and spirituality, who has a clear vision for their future and why they want to go to college. So those essays are critical. So we focus with our children's education very much on writing their entire resume of what experiences they're having, musical instruments, community involvement, service, plays, musicals, internships, work experience, and math. We put our highest level of academic focus on math because of the need to get a high score on an ACT if college is your end goal.
Liberty Hills, I agree with many of the points that Carmel made. Being a great writer and fantastic at math kind of writes your ticket. To make sure that we're on point with those things, Liberty Hills gives the old Iowa skills test. Before, it's a paper and pencil test. It's not data mining. We do it with random.
Random number
we
assigned
use?
to
We,
students.
yeah,
No
we.
names, no birthdays, nothing.
Yeah. So there's nothing like that, and it's just testing skills, and then we know exactly where our students are. In addition to that, I am really down on testing, and even more so after being part of Liberty Hills for the last 4 years, because we teach Saxon math at Liberty Hills, which gives an absolutely fantastic end of the week math test. And you know exactly where your students are and what concepts they're missing. We teach grammar from this Rod and Staff book, which is a fantastic curriculum, which periodically gives an assessment. But I don't, I teach 5th and 6th grade myself, and I don't need the assessment at the end of the chapter to tell me which students don't understand the positives and which do. You know if you're paying attention. So we do those things, and not so much, I think, to prove to the staff that students are learning, but to prove to parents that their students are learning, I guess. So, you're good? Okay.
When we decided to consider accreditation, we actually did research. We called Harvard, we called Cornell, we called Yale. I called all of the big ticket item universities and BYU to research whether accreditation was worth pursuing, how our students will be prepared to go to any of these if they wanted to do so. You don't have to go to accredited school to go to any of these, including BYU, and any of these big universities. But we have developed a strong scope and sequence. We have clearly defined graduation requirements that exceed the state of Utah expectations, and we are confident that our students will be prepared to enter any of their college choices. In fact, our 9th graders last year scored in their, what was it, 90th percentile? Mm-hmm. That was the first time that they took a standardized test, and we administered it cold turkey. They hadn't, many of our students have not had any experience taking multiple choice tests at all, and they did really well on it with no preparation. So,
yeah, we prepared.
So put that on record.
Yeah, we prepared. Oh, sorry. We prepared them by saying, this isn't that important and do the best you can, because we didn't want to stress them out. So.
Yeah, the Sudbury Valley model is quite unique and took me a while to be able to accept. But they don't have homework. They don't have tests at all. They, again, it's self-directed learning. The students are picking and deciding and choosing what they do. But they've been around for 50 years, and they keep statistics on their graduates and what's that. And what they've seen is that over 80% of their graduates go on to higher education or trade schools of their choice. Those that want to go on to a university, most of them are getting into their college of first choice, Harvard, MIT. They're in Massachusetts, so a lot of them trying there. And the statistic caught my eye as I started a business a few times. And their graduates, 41% of their graduates start their own business or create their own career. From public ed, it's 3%. And they're self-reliant, they're self-confident, and they've developed the skills they need to learn. The last 2 days, I'm chair of the Advancement Council for Engineering and Technology at BYU. And we've had conference the last 2 days and talking with the staff there. They have IT graduates who specialize in cyber security. Starting out with a 4-year degree, they have 6-figure salaries starting out. These jobs weren't there 10 years ago at all. 5 years ago, they were just starting. 5 years from now, the jobs will be even different. What we need to be teaching kids is how to learn and how to be self-confident and how to own their own education. That's what they need more than anything, because things are changing so rapidly now. That's amazing.
What's the building code for having a school? And where do you find out about all those little rules they have?
It's just the Utah State School Board has a web page. It's only one page, so that part isn't a big challenge. Have a fire drill, have some fire extinguishers up, and exits plainly marked, and common sense things like that.
Not too particular about how many restrooms, how many
Not for
windows.
private schools. So.
But you have to, you may have to get a permit from a city, and they have rules. That's what I've been working on for the last 6 months with the city of Lehigh. And we just had our planning commission meeting where we presented, and they voted this last Thursday, and we got our approval. But it took the 6 months to get to that. And I'm using a current building that we have to modify. It has to be full ADA requirements. I have to add in more bathrooms, and I have to have a ramp in the front, a ramp in the back, and then all the fire, smoke detectors, and the lights that flash. I had one bid that was going to cost me $12,000. I have another bid that it's $17,000 to do that. So it's, there's a lot. The city had a lot of requirements that I had to meet, and so I had an engineering company helping with the parking lot and the site plan. I had an architect for the modifications to our buildings, and I have a landscape architect for laying out the vegetation that we have to have as a private school. Public schools are different.
I have a question. So where does the funding come for all of that before you start collecting tuition?
I've been blessed greatly. I started a software company in Silicon Valley a number of years ago, and this is my passion, and it's my way of giving back. And so I bought the land. I'm funding all of it, and there's a plan for me to get out of it, so I can go and do another school in 3 years when I can get finance. You have to have a business for about 3 to 4 years.
It's a business, is what he's saying.
Yes.
Yeah, you have to have a business running, and our nonprofit school is a business for 3 to 4 years to be able to go and get financing. So at that time I can go, the school can buy from me everything, and then I can go and do another one somewhere.
That's the realist. Mark is giving you the realistic vision. The reason our experience is different is because our building is an old building that was already zoned as a school when we took it over. So dealing with the city, that is really an important point that Mark has made, because you won't want to go into a city that is going to be, especially if you're going to build, and that is going to be unfriendly to what you're trying to accomplish. And we've actually been warned about that.
And I'm not saying Lehigh is unfriendly at all. It's just there's lots of regulations.
That's what I
Sure.
expected.
Yeah.
That's why we encourage all of you to support the existing schools rather than starting your own.
Go to Liberty Hills. That's right. Move all of you move to Davis County and come to us.
Yeah.
So, one thing, the men always seem to be concerned about the safety when I surveyed them. First thing this one guy said, he says, in my ideal school, I want metal detectors. And well, I didn't think that. And he says, I want a big wall around it. Has security been an issue for any of your schools? Have you had any crime or problems? No.
No. Well, we're sitting right there at the front usually. I mean, there's always someone sitting at the front, and we don't allow strangers to walk through our building. So, if you want to meet an angry mom, I guess, but other than that, we're good.
No, the families we attract are very safe, calm families. So far.
I've noticed a trend with a lot of co-ops or private schools that they want to attract all grade levels, or they want to and really have a good high school program, and then it turns out over the years and ends up being more elementary.
Mm-hmm.
Can anyone speak to that, and any solutions to keep it with a good, strong high school program? Where I live, all the kids are going to public high school. They're homeschool dropouts, and not all, excuse me, but there's, yeah, but it's a concern of mine.
It's a valid concern. I don't think it's a viable idea that you're going to start a homeschool co-op with a group of teenagers. With Family Leadership Academy, the oldest students that we had for the first year were 12 and 13, and we were really building it for them. But now they have over 60 teenagers and a huge waiting list. And so I think the key to success in that area is to plan for, have those tween ages. And they have had, when I was there, and future boards have had as our focus, what are we doing and creating for these oldest students, and trying to create the ideal environment for them to stay. And also at the moms' nights, discussing and providing education for what are we going to do as a group to make sure that we're not the ones returning to public school, and as soon as our kids hit 9th grade, sending them away, because we had a very clear vision of why we were doing this, to what end, and the high school years were a big part of our vision, and so we just made that the priority. So I suppose find people who are aligned to that vision, have correct expectations that it's not going to happen overnight, but now 5 years into it, they have a thriving. People don't want to leave because they know they can't get back in, because the waiting list now is. So quality helps.
I think part of the challenge with that is parents' concerns, although I don't know that if they understood more, it would be a valid concern, because like has been mentioned before, homeschool kids get into Ivy League schools. So that really shouldn't be a real concern. But for a private school, Challenger goes through 8th grade. My suspicion, I'm not positive, but my suspicion is the reason is that there is, they don't want to go through the accreditation process. So I think the accreditation process, although it's a huge pain, had some value in it, and simply just giving us some things to think about that we might not have considered before, as a benefit to our students. And interestingly enough, some homeschool families were concerned about us becoming accredited, that it would make us state aligned. It does not, and we're not going to change our mission statement or the goals that we have at Liberty Hills to meet a state requirement. We would, or the curriculum, we would lose the accreditation first. But I think some of that happens because parents are anxious to get their kids into college. And then the second reason is just the social thing. We don't have, choices are wonderful, but they're extremely expensive. So it's very difficult to have a basketball team, a football team, a lacrosse team, a swimming team, and kids like public school for that reason. I think a lot of the other things you can provide, especially a rock solid classical education. So, anything?
Can't you just join public school teams though? If you want to? You can, without being enrolled in any classes?
You can do, Utah law allows for part-time enrollment in public school.
You don't even have to enroll. You can be in a private school or homeschooled and join the extracurricular activities.
Yeah. But
And
then you have friends in the extracurricular activities, and then you want to be there. So that seems to be happening. So we'll see what happens with American Heritage. They're building this $50 million high school, and we'll see if they're able to replicate all that
Yeah.
in American Fork.
yes,
Have
yeah,
they
construction
not had
started
high school?
a few weeks ago.
Okay.
They had high school, but it wasn't they still,
They have had high school, but the majority of their students are elementary and middle school, and now they're pushing it into the high school population.
And so.
And I'm not representative of them, so don't, do your own research on this.
Yeah.
So for us, we are 6th through 12. So, and that's the reason is because the curriculum that was developed through Williamsburg was based on that. So we actually have, I guess, the opposite ideas. At some point down the road, we might look at K through 6, K through 5, since now we're 6 through 12. So we're a fully online school. So we do have students, from St. George all the way up through Logan. And so that online option there is something that works really well, actually, and that was worked out even before we started. It was, the process and the format and everything was already in place, and the curriculum was based on that, so working quite well.